Hey, party people. Feminist Frequency is turning 11 years old. Can you believe it? Because I certainly can't. But it would be a shame to let such a momentous occasion go by without having a little party. So mark your calendars, folks. This Thursday, May 21st from 5 p.m. to midnight Pacific time. We have loads of guests, games, and giveaways, and you aren't going to want to miss it. Twitch.tv/FemFreak. I was in Cape Town in December, and I had one of my cab drivers say that he was going to move to America to make money. And I was like, cool, what are you going to do? He's like, I don't know, you just go to America and make money. And I was like, cool, dude. Like, this idea is still so deeply pervasive internationally in a lot of places that it's mind-boggling to me. Welcome to Feminist Frequency Radio. This is the show that asks you to be critical of the media that you love. I'm Anita Sarkeesian, and I'm joined today by two women who always make noise during silent meditations.
Oh, God!
See,
that
there she goes.
Right? Exactly.
Every time we're in a silent meditation,
I did not know that was coming.
she starts laughing, and then I start laughing. It's just a big mess.
And then I sternly stare at both of them and nod my head to be like, get the fuck out.
Yeah, you know what? Take your praise tag off.
That would be Carolyn Pettit and Ebony Adams, ladies and gentlemen.
Indeed. Who else?
That's
Who
right.
else could it possibly be?
Today, we are going to be talking about Little America, a new anthology series focusing on true stories of American immigrants on Apple TV+. You know, the plus makes it digital as opposed to a device.
All that analog Apple stuff out there.
We're living in the future.
Well, how is everyone today?
Okay.
Any exciting food plans? Any games? I don't know. I'm just...
I'll mention that the highlight, if you will, of my day so far has been that Elon Musk, our
Oh, boy.
yeah, always good, start to a story. Elon Musk tweeted, "Take the red pill." And then,
my God.
And then Ivanka.
No.
Am I getting my Trumps mixed up? Ivanka Trump quote tweeted that and said, taken. But then here's the good part. The actual good part is that Lily Wachowski, one of the trans, creators and directors of The Matrix, replied to both of them saying "fuck you both."
So good.
So that's pretty good. Like that made it all worth it.
That's fantastic. Will you link that? I want to see that.
Yes.
Will you link that in the show notes?
Absolutely.
Oh, what a treat. That was totally worth bringing up.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Carolyn. You just made this day so much better.
I know, right?
You're welcome.
I feel like I have a new lease on life.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, then this episode is going to cook.
It's going to be great. All right, let's get into it, yeah? Or actually, Ebony, do you have anything? I don't know how you can top that, but you can try.
I can't. So, yeah, let's just keep it moving because I want to just embarrass myself.
I have a food thing. I split a CSA box with a friend, and there is a beet in it the size of my head.
I love beets. What are you going to do with that beet?
I am going to make beet hummus.
Ah.
I'm going to see how that tastes. Because I don't know if y'all know my whole thing about how I am allergic to chickpeas, apparently. And I love hummus. And so I try to find alternative ways to make it. So fava bean hummus, super good.
Oh, yeah.
But now I'm like, what the fuck do I do with a beet? Here's the thing about beets. I like a beet, Ebony. I am a fan of a beet. I just don't like that much. Like, I can't, like, those big-ass beet salads, I have to split those with someone. I can't, like...
Split those with me, homegirl. I love a beet. Like, give me half that beet. I want to roast the shit out of that thing. In the middle of the night when it's not hot anymore.
I put it in the Instapot for an hour. It took a goddamn hour to make that thing soft. But the other thing I want to try, because I have a couple of smaller beets with it, is there is a restaurant in LA called Dune, and they have a pickled beet sandwich that is fucking amazing. It's so, so good. So I'm like, maybe I can learn how to pickle some beets. So that's what I'm going to try.
Yes. One thing that I've been trying to do, because I find cooking and being in the kitchen so calming, is I've been doing even more cooking than I normally do. And I've been trying to get into like pickling and stuff. And I'm about to get a canning set and start canning the shit out of some summer vegetables. So yeah, let me know how that pickling with the beets goes.
I love it. I love fermented foods and pickled shit, and it's my favorite.
Yeah.
And it's so good for you. So, get those enzymes, y'all.
Yeah.
Speaking of enzymes.
Okay.
Okay, actually, do you want me to make this a transition that works? So most cultures around the world have some take on a fermented food that is like a staple in their culture because our ancestors know that fermented foods are really good for us and help with digestion, right? So also, kimchi.
Refrigeration issues?
Yeah, exactly. Or, in Scandinavia, lack of fucking seasons, ability to grow anything. So you've got like sauerkraut and pickles and kimchi, et cetera, right? Little America is all about different cultures. And they probably all have some kind of delicious fermented food. Hey!
Okay, you know what? Oh, boy. We got there, but...
I'm just saying, I told you I'd bring it home. I didn't say it would be good.
Yeah, okay.
All right, y'all. With Kumail Nanjiani and Emily Gordon among its producers, Little America is a new anthology series of half-hour episodes, each telling another fact-based story about immigrants and children of immigrants. The stories include the tale of a young boy left to run the family motel when his parents are deported, a Nigerian college student in Oklahoma who loves American cowboy culture, and a Syrian refugee seeking asylum in the U.S. so that he can live openly as a gay man. The show is currently available on Apple TV Plus and has already been renewed for a second season.
Speaking of hummus and food, the opening of the very last episode, that hummus looked fucking bomb.
Y'all,
I did salivate there. Whew, that looked good.
Okay, so for real, when we were talking about doing the show, I was like, look, if y'all can't watch all of them, please at least watch the last one. Partly, the last one is called The Sun. It is the one about the Syrian refugees seeking asylum in the U.S., partly because I just wanted to talk about that opening scene because it is a Syrian family who's all together and all the food is coming out, and those shots of the food it made me miss my family.
Yeah.
It made me hungry for all that food. Like that's my shit. That's like the shit I grew up on, and it made me so happy to see it.
Oh goodness, it looked so good. There were moments throughout this show, including that one, that were just so... the episodes are short. They're 30 minutes, as you mentioned, but there are occasional moments of such like density and tactility and like color. And I'm not conveying it, but in the short amount of time that you get to spend with these characters, occasionally there will just be these luminous moments where you feel completely immersed in the like tiny worlds existing within, the larger world of the American community that they're trying to exist in, or, the home culture that they are leaving behind or attempting to leave behind or whatever. They're just like each episode is written by and directed by a different person. And yet that is one through line throughout all 8 episodes that I really enjoyed.
So when I was kind of tossing this script together for this episode before we recorded it, and I looked it up on Wikipedia, and one little factoid that is mentioned on the Wikipedia page is that about that 8th episode, the filming of it, interestingly, is that because of the, what's widely known as the Muslim ban passed by President Trump, that particular episode was apparently, and again, this is just from Wikipedia. I didn't do a deep dive to confirm this, but it seems plausible to me that episode in particular wound up being filmed in Quebec because some of the actors in it could not enter the United States to film the episode here. And I just think that it's kind of a fascinating thing to consider in relation to the show, because this show is, by and large, I'd say it wants to ultimately be kind of heartwarming. It wants to be kind of life-affirming, even though it does deal, of course, at times with very real hardships and struggles and everything. But, I think it wants you to feel a kind of, ultimately a sense of like, that America is a place where people, wherever they may come from, can sort of succeed and everything. And it's just like, and I don't want every story about immigrants to the United States to be one of that's that's defined by like extreme confrontation with like racism and systemic oppression and all of that. Like, I understand that we need stories that aren't just that, and yet there are ways in which I think this series doesn't always confront those things enough. I guess, in one specific example, or I think for me the most kind of revealing example, or the one that at least got me the most worked up personally, was in the very first episode, The Manager. So this is a story about, he's 12 years old, this boy, when his parents are deported, and he's kind of a spelling bee, aspiring spelling bee champ. And what he ends up doing is going to this national spelling bee and getting an audience, actually, as all the children who participate in the spelling bee do, with Laura Bush, right? Because this is taking place in the mid 2005-ish or whatever, and he reads her this plaintive letter, because nothing he's doing to try to get his parents' help is working or anything. And Laura Bush is ineffectual. She's like, write a letter to my office, and nothing happens. So it's not like it presents her as any kind of savior or anything. But because of my own like leftist convictions, what I want our show, like in any narrative that's even going to touch on the Bushes, I don't want any rehabilitation of the Bushes. I don't want any like gentle portrayals of the Bushes. His like teacher at school is like, tell her I'm such a big fan of hers, and it's like, no, nobody should be a big fan of the Bushes. Like, they're war criminals. Everyone, like, I don't want Ellen DeGeneres talking about like hobnobbing with him and being nice to him. Like decency is not, niceness to them. Decency is calling them out at every opportunity, etc. So like, but at the same time, I understand that like the show, it's going to alienate people if it's some like.
I don't think that's what's happening, Carolyn, in that episode, though. I think that like that's what actually happened, and they're in this small town that would like that would think that teacher would like Bush, and also that kid doesn't know any better and thinks that is his way out. So like, I don't think it necessarily portrays them well. I think it actually shows that like they don't give a fuck and aren't going to do anything because of the way that episode ended. Like, she didn't actually help him. No, and it was really awkward to watch. Yeah, I mean, I did appreciate. I will say some things. Like, I did appreciate that episode. I liked that episode on the whole. Like, and I liked that. I like that it does things like there's a kind of wild party at the motel, and the main character, like, he just sort of wakes up in the this room alone the next morning, and maybe you think if it's a conventional narrative, it's going to be like, oh, his life is going to really go off the rails, it's going to go to a dark place, or he's going to have some confrontation with law enforcement himself or whatever. But it's not that at all. It's just like he's struggling a bit, he's having a bit of a rough time, but it's not like it's this entry point to some like deep, dark, like crisis of despair in his life or anything like that. I did like the episode. I just I don't know. I think it's interesting that you're pointing out that episode for this specifically, because one of my issues with this series is that almost every episode has a at least relatively happy ending, or leaving you feeling like at least optimistic, except for that episode. And that's why I like that one the best in a lot of ways. Like, the end of that episode is as bleak as the fucking episode in the reality of like, he gets his, do we want to spoil this? I don't know. But like the episode does not feel good. The end of the episode doesn't feel good like every other one. And I think that in some ways, so Carolyn, you started talking about the Muslim ban, and that the realities imposed on the production of this show. I actually read the article that was linked from Wikipedia. That's where they got that information from. And Stephen Dunn is the director of that particular episode. We're going back to the one about the queer Syrian man. And he talks about how he didn't want to make the show, he didn't want to make that episode feel like, oh, it's like the most horrible thing ever to be queer in the Middle East, but that it's a perfect haven in America by any means.
Right.
And I think that he failed, because one of the examples he used was that to show that was that at the door when he's trying to get into the club, the bouncer doesn't understand what immigration papers are. He wouldn't give him the time of day. So like, that was like a racist intersection at the gay club that this guy is having to deal with. Now, I don't think necessarily like, I think the reality is that if you are coming from the situation where he has been closeted and literally hurt, like physically abused, disconnected and kicked out of his family, like stuck in a country he doesn't know anyone in, all because he didn't mean to come out, but he did. So because he's gay, like going to that club is going to be fucking amazing, right? Like that is going to be a really incredible experience. But I do think that like in these short vignettes, I didn't like that most of them made you feel like it's going to be okay.
Or go ahead, Emily.
Oh, and I say, sorry. I know, Ebony, you haven't talked. I enjoyed a lot of this series. Like, I liked a lot of these stories and I'm glad the series existed. So I just be critical of the media you love kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I
didn't want to make it seem like I'm talking shit on the whole thing.
No, I think, you both of y'all are bringing up really interesting points and angles that I hadn't really considered in quite that way as I was watching the show. I will say that the show, like we said, it's an anthology series, so none of the episodes are connected to each other than, through this kind of overarching, notion of America as an idea. None of the episodes, to my mind anyway, really wrestle with like kind of, the gritty, ugly, awesome, fucked up, complex, layered reality of, America as it exists, or even really Americans, for whatever that means. But it really is about this idea of America that is globally pervasive, that draws people in, right? But other than that, none of the stories connect. And they really do portray their beginnings as magazine profiles,
And this like American dream shit that is so common. Americans definitely they're certainly drink the Kool-Aid on that mentality, right? Like there's definitely some of these stories that are like, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you work hard enough and you'll make it. But that like, for example, I'm a child of immigrants that came to America for a better life, right? Like there's this sense in the world that you come to America to provide for your family. And that reality, like I was in Cape Town in December and I had one of my cab drivers say that he was going to move to America to make money. And I was like, cool, what are you going to do? He's like, I don't know. You just go to America and make money. And I was like, cool, dude. Like this idea is still so deeply pervasive internationally in a lot of places that it's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, but I mean, the reality is that for a lot of folks, because of the way that the US and other Western nations have intentionally depressed the economies of other what we call developing nations or third world, like people can come here and work and send money back. And so sometimes like the specifics of it are immaterial, or at least at the level that some folks are doing. But going back to like the idea of this being an anthology series, from the very beginning, like I think it's interesting that the show starts with the manager. And again, the show is called Little America, and it kind of sets you up, to think like, oh, we're going to get these kind of like slice of life, homey, vaguely soft focus stories of these, particular people. And each episode ends with photographic like a short like slideshow of the actual person that the episode is based on. And so even if the episode itself doesn't end with something particularly like uplifting or nice, we get to see that, oh, you know, this person did succeed, or they did fall in love and get married, or whatever. But for what it was, it felt like, maybe it's because of where I am personally right now, week 8 of, you know, sheltering at home, and only able to consume things in bite-sized pieces. But I did like the way that it allowed me to kind of dip my toe in these very specific stories, but it didn't attempt to be a dissertation about each one of these cultures, because I think it would have ill-served, you know, these people. Like we aren't going to get, you know, everything that happened to this little kid who was forced to take over his family's business at age 12. We're not going to see like all of the shitty interactions that Iwabune, you know, had to deal with in fucking 1981 Norman, Oklahoma. You're only going to get like, I don't know, like tapas in a way. Speaking of food again. But one thing that I did find interesting across all of the episodes is the ways in which different immigrant groups, we don't really see too many immigrant groups interacting or orbiting in the same place. And the manager, the very first episode, like this kid is running this motel, and like the people who work for him, there's an older white dude and there's a young white woman who's a cleaner. And I was kind of pulled out seeing those people, because I was like, no, those people, like, you would actually have Latin people doing those jobs. Like, those are the people that do those jobs. But it was almost as if there could only be kind of one sourse of othering sometimes in these episodes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
I guess, yeah, and so, like, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of conflicted about this show. But I mean, overall, I did like it. But you know, an example of the way in which I'm conflicted is at the end of the second episode, which is called "The Jaguar," which is a story about a young high school student who's the daughter of are they Mexican? I mean, I don't know if
I don't know that we ever have that articulated. Right. But no, she ain't Cuban.
Right. You know, but this young,
but they're undocumented. Yeah.
Yeah, they're undocumented, and you know, her mom like cleans rich people's houses to kind of pull in money and stuff. And this high school student, like, she finds this kind of outlet and place in which she can succeed in competitive squash. And you know, but one of the obstacles throughout the episode is people talking about like, oh, and then you can go to like these, you know, if you succeed, you can go to these tournaments. You can go to like tournaments elsewhere in the world. And she's like, well, I can't get a passport. But and then there's this flash forward at the very end of the episode where, you know, we see some of the ways in which she goes on to be very, you know, successful, and like that flash forward, like, it made me tear up. Like it was very, because I'm very susceptible to like pulling on the heartstrings, you know, media that like wants to just make you cry and stuff, and this worked for me. But at the same time, there is that way in which I'm like, well, okay, but like what is the message that this is sending almost is, you know, and again, maybe this is just me like kind of misreading it or coming away with my own take on it, but like the message it's sending is, hey, you know, like, be just great in school or great in an athletic field or whatever, and you too can like succeed, even, you know, in America, even if you're undocumented, as opposed to like we should be outraged at these systems that like limit people and dehumanize and like prevent them from like having these kinds of opportunities. And like, what about everyone like who isn't going to be like an Olympic squash competitor or whatever? Like, I mean, what do they do? You know?
Yeah, I think it, you know, in some way, like, and you see at the end of that episode that like the family gets to immigrate legally, and gets like citizenship, right? Because you see that photo of them at the whatever, and like, I don't know who's gonna watch for this show, right? It's probably, you know, is it people who are already like on board and care about immigrant rights and all of that stuff? Because like, to me, that was a very compelling story. It was like these stories are very well done, right? Like these are very like high production value story. Like they're very well done, and I enjoyed I enjoyed them a lot. But that I'm troubled by that because it's what I was trying to say earlier of like there is a lot of like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and if you just work hard, Carolyn, like you were saying, like you can make it. And I'm like, that's not the majority of people. That's not the majority. And so like you're pulling out the stories that are the margin of error because that's what makes them compelling, interesting, exciting stories. But it just, in some ways, it creates more harm by perpetuating that like this is possible when it's really not actually statistically that possible. But at the same time, like we can't just tell stories about how fucking awful everything is, right? Like there's a tension here. And I think that I think that this series relies a little too much on the happy endings.
Yeah, right. I mean, again, I am torn because, as I said earlier, like I don't want every story of immigrant life in the United States to be defined by, you know, oppression and hardship to the extreme. Like I want them to have space to be human and to have experience a full spectrum of human life and like all of that. But I feel like this series kind of glosses over some things, but it is extremely well done. I mean, one thing, like, you know, even in that just half hour of storytelling time that squash episode gets, for instance, like it's very effective at, you know, setting up her big opponent in the local, you know, tournament as kind of the Ivan Drago of squash, like this one, you know, because we see her doing that thing where she's like banging the ball against the right wall and the left wall and the right wall and the left wall, and so she's like this like Terminator of squash, you know, and you kind of get that sense of like, whoa, like she's going up against like this, like what a fearsome opponent. It is very well done in terms of telling these stories in a very limited amount of time.
Yeah, I guess for me, because we were getting these short, you know, glimpses, these short, you know, like quick thumbnails of a person's life, I was fine with them being largely positive, you know, ending on, you know, a high note or at least a hopeful note for all of them. If we were getting longer, deeper dives into these people's stories, then yes, I would have thought they would have been ill-served by that kind of treatment. But because the show is what it is, I was largely fine with that. And I do think that although there's like, you do get the sense that like, oh, these are singular people. But to me, what I came away from it thinking is not that like if you don't do, you know, wake up at 3:30 in the morning and go hit the squash, you know, courts, or if you don't, you know, take up the reins as the concierge at your family's motel at 12, there's no way that you can succeed and you don't really deserve to succeed. That wasn't what I took from it. What I took from it was there are all of these singular stories and all of these singular people out there, and we just don't know about them. Like we haven't spent nearly enough time getting to know the people that are in our community and make up our communities. And that, you know, there are all of these hidden facets of brilliance out there. There's more of these. And so for me, like and again, it's just, you know, my personal reaction to it. It was like, oh, and as cheesy as it sounds, like everyone has a way in which they're like the Batman of their story, you know, like the something that they're great at, you know, some wonderful memory from their childhood or relationship with their parents that causes them to do X, Y, and Z or whatever. Like that was kind of what I took from it, which is why, and I want to talk about if y'all thought the same thing. I was kind of pulled up by episode 4, The Silence. Because to me, it seemed so tonally different,
so
thematically different
I was
from the
like,
rest of them that I was like, this seems like, because I was like, I wonder if, because I know that there's going to be a season 2. If that had come in season 2, I think it would have made more sense to me. But coming where it does, I was like, this is like,
did they have to talk about a white person? Like, was it just like, we can't not have a white person because immigration is not just people of color? Like, that's what that episode felt like to me. Yeah, and not that it was a bad episode.
No, it was one of my favorites. Like, I really liked it, but I was like, wow, this is weird, especially coming from the cowboy, you know?
And like, why was that chosen in this group? I agree. I felt like it was really weird, even though, again, it was quite good.
I don't know. I mean, it's certainly, there's no question that it stands out. Like it is, but I guess to me, it felt like let the bit of comic relief in an, I mean, not that the series doesn't have lighthearted elements and even more lighthearted stories, but I don't know. It just felt like a story that was almost entirely, meant to be like a little bit of a it's a romance. It's got the kind of, I mean, not that silent meditation is inherently silly. It's not, and I think it can be very valuable. But just the way it's framed in this story, I think there's is as something it offers opportunities for amusement. I don't know.
And most of our viewers probably haven't watched the show, so just for context, The Silence is an episode where there is a white woman at a silent retreat.
Right.
And like almost the entire episode is silent, which is, it was beautifully done, given that you literally couldn't talk the whole time. But she's like trying to deal with being there, and she develops a love interest while she's there.
Yeah. No, but yes, obviously, and there is certainly that aspect. I don't think you're at all wrong of like, well, we need to cover our bait. We need to, do the white people. Of course, some immigrants are white or whatever. Like even though again, like everything under Trump and the Muslim ban and everything has emphasized, as if it ever was not clear, that like there's one sort of standard almost of experiences for or treatment for like immigrants from like European countries who are white versus other people who come here from elsewhere and who are not white.
I found this one so interesting because, as you say, it's almost completely silent until the very end, because this woman is in attending a silent retreat. And so even though you throughout that, okay, this woman is probably an immigrant, or she is foreign born, she's not American, native born American. We don't know for sure who she is and where she comes from until like the last couple of minutes, right? And then there's that great speech she gives, which, Jack, her love interest, does not understand, where she's like, I have trouble with, talking to people. And so I thought I would come to America by myself, and it's been lonely, and I wanted to see these things, but all I've seen is McDonald's, and there's so many fucking McDonald's. And it's this great speech, right? But because you only get it at the end, you're like, okay, what question is this answering? What point is this making? Like, how does this thematically fit in, until we know for sure this woman is not from America and this is her experience? And like, once we do learn that, what is it saying? So I found myself like kind of appreciating the fact that the episode wasn't hitting me over the head with certain things. But I also was like, I don't know, maybe I'm just not getting it. Is the point, or one of the points, like the kind of weird appropriative, consumer culture of America? Because that's certainly there with this like, meditation retreat with these vaguely sort of like Orientalist markers, and Zachary Quinto is the guru with his tunic that's got a price tag on it. And, primarily, white folks attending, which clearly you have to be at least pretty privileged to attend this 10-day retreat, right? Like, is that what's going on here? Is it about like American consumer culture? But yeah, I just felt like as the sole kind of representative of white immigration, except for that Scottish dude and the, I think, Eastern European woman and the cowboy. I don't know. It felt like I wasn't quite sure. I was pulled up, as I say.
Yeah,
I don't know. The cowboy and the son were my favorite ones.
Did y'all watch The Baker? Mm-hmm. So I have a question about, did you watch it, Carol?
I did not watch that one.
Okay. Well, so just real quick, just a question around. So the story is about a woman who comes from Uganda. She gets married and then divorced, and she has a child. She's living on her friend's couch for like 8 months.
She wears an amazing dress when she goes to the disco.
Yeah. Yes, she does. And so the whole thing is that like she was sent by her family. Like it's not it is insinuated that she didn't particularly want to go to America, but she's the oldest child. She was sent to America to like make it for the family, to be the one that makes it, kind of thing. And she's like, you know, working as a waiter, as a server. And her mom's just like giving her shit. So she starts to bake. She's a great baker. Her father was a baker. She starts to bake cookies. And like, so the story is the hustle, right? It's another bootstrap one. And like, you kind of admire the fact that this woman is like, I'm going to sell cookies on the street. Like, I'm going to make this shit happen. And I just wanted to bring it up because I felt a little uncomfortable or like couldn't quite parse through how much of this experience was like, you know, her American friends were like, you basically use your culture to sell your shit. Like, put a basket on your head because that's how Ugandan women, like, they all can walk around with baskets on their heads, and like wear your Ugandan outfits and like, you know, the beautiful patterned dresses and stuff. And so like it felt, I didn't know how to interpret that in terms of like, she had to be this like sideshow in order to make it, right? She had like, she couldn't just be like, I'm been in America for a long time and get to like do whatever I want, but I have to embody this. So I don't know if I'm explaining this well, but I basically was like, did she really want to do that? Was that part of like her own personal cultural expression, or was she doing it because she knew it would sell her African magic cookies, quote unquote?
Well, I think like there's this great article. I think it was in the New York Times. I will find the link and share it, but it's all about how brown cooks in this country, if you want to make it as a brown cook, you have to make some version of what white culture assumes your native culture to be. So if you are, you know, Indian or Pakistani and you want to own a restaurant, we only want you to make Indian or Pakistani food. Or if you're a Latinx, we want you to make food that we recognize as, you know, like Mexican food or Cuban food or whatever, right? But if you are white and you want to make, you know, Indian food or Japanese food, or you want to, you know, be Rick Bayless and, you know, have a Mexican food like empire, that's perfectly fine. To me, it kind of spoke to that. And it speaks to the large...
Even though she's making chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, like, this is what we demand. We would demand a certain amount at the same time that we penalize people for a certain amount of like cultural performativity, you know, in ways that are palatable to us. And so that's what it spoke to me. And in addition to like the hustle that you're talking about, like there is a way in which if you are an immigrant in this country, like, yeah, you know that hustle intimately. Like, you know about the getting up at 3:30 in the morning and taking the bus somewhere and working a couple of, like, those are the only options available to you because there's simply no other avenue available for you to even just make it, not succeed, but just like put food on the table, live in some dude's garage, whatever. Which, speaking of that reminds me, I was wrong about not showing like different groups of color, immigrant groups interacting, because in the Jaguar, the second episode, we do have the Rosado family living in the garage of that dude who is also foreign-born person of color, and we feel like he's a shithead, right. You know.
Oh my God,
I take it back. I was wrong. You heard it here first, folks. Don't hit me up on Twitter.
Were there any other episodes y'all wanted to call out specifically?
I really loved the cowboy and I loved the son. I mean, first of all, any episode that's got a gay dance club scene, like, I'm gonna love it. I don't care if it's maybe manipulative, whatever, but you put on those disco lights and you have someone in a fierce white wig telling me to love and accept myself. Child, come on. I'm all about it.
I love that episode. I was a little bit like, it's an interesting choice to put that at the very end because it's definitely it's a really strong one. And so it felt like, yeah, we want to go out with a bang, but also like, what if people don't make it that far? You know?
Folks, the show is free right now. Normally you got to pay for Apple TV Plus, but they're making it free for people to watch right now. They're 30-minute episodes. There's 8 of them. Dip in and out.
Yeah. And they are standalone. Yeah. I do want to also call out that they were very conscious, the creators were very mindful of getting specific directors and writers on the show. Like, the most famous person on the whole show is Zachary Quinto, who is like in the silence and is not a main character or that like important, although he's great in it.
Yeah, and he has maybe like 2 lines. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. But like, you know, this show is not meant to be flashy either, right? There's not like you have all these celebrities playing all of these people, right? And getting folks from from culture, like people who understand these cultures to direct them and to write them, and finding people from different, like, they got playwrights, not traditional TV writers for some of these episodes as well.
Yeah, just real quick, Anita and I got to speak to Emily V. Gordon, who's the co-creator, one of the executive producers of the show. Many of y'all know her from The Big Sick, from writing The Big Sick. With her husband, Kamel Nanjiani. And we had a really great conversation with her. And she talked about the ways that the executive producers, were deliberate and careful about looking for new talent here, but also, having like cultural consultants on the show and bringing people into the writer's room and giving them charge of these sets. So that what we get is not just the standard, like, white view of immigration or, non-white identity. So I'm interested to see where the show goes in the second season and who they bring aboard, but also what stories, because there's so many more of just these amazing stories. Like, give me an immigrant family sitting around a table eating food, and I'm going to tune in for 10 hours. So, yeah,
totally.
Give me more.
I will say, too, that if you are in that space that I think, we go in and out of, where you're like, I got nothing to watch, or I'm like, I don't know what to connect to, or everything feels whatever. Like, these are short episodes and they're standalone, so they're really easy to pop into. I know we just said that, but I've gone in and out of like, I should I watch something? What should I watch? I don't know. I don't feel like getting invested in a big thing. And so this actually like really hit the spot for me in terms of like really high quality little pieces that weren't a giant commitment. So, all right. Are we feeling good about this conversation?
Yeah.
Yes.
Anything else? Okay. That was my not so subtle way of being like, anything else?
I have stuff, but I'll talk about it in the bonus.
Okay, cool.
Teaser, taster.
Yeah. You know we have a bonus, right, for patrons, the patrons on the Patreon. If y'all didn't know, we do. You should go check that out to get in on the bonus action. All right, we're going to cut me off now before I keep going and talking like this. We'll be right back. Hey, y'all, remember at the top of the episode, I talked about Feminist Frequency's birthday party happening on May 21st from 5 p.m. to midnight Pacific time. Yep, just reminding you to mark your calendars and join us at twitch.tv/femfreak. Now, I don't want to spoil any of the surprises, but seriously, it's going to be a treat with all kinds of fun surprises and giveaways and guests. It's going to be so good. Did I mention it's going to be good? It's going to be good. It also just happens to be, coincidentally, definitely not planned, the last day of the Stay in the Game Relief Fund. That's where 4 nonprofits who serve the video game industry are asking you to help us stay in the game. We're close to our goal, but we need your help to get to the finish line. You can learn more at givebutter.com/stayinthegame. Got it? Big party, big fundraiser. See y'all there. What's your freak out? Now it's time to talk about what's been thrilling us, moving us, upsetting us, or infuriating us this past week. Carolyn, you want to get us started?
Sure. I think appropriate perhaps for our conversation about sort of, cultures that exist within America. I'm freaking out this week about a series on Netflix called Unorthodox. This is a series that is loosely based on a memoir written in 2012 by a woman named Deborah Feldman, and it's a story about a young woman in the show. Her name is Esther Shapiro, or Esty to her friends, Esty, who makes an escape really from her marriage and her life in a Hasidic Jewish community in Brooklyn, and she kind of flees to Berlin. And the show is it's so fascinating. First of all, it's Shira Haas, who plays Esther, is just amazing in this role. Truly, a truly amazing performance. But the show is it's so, I think, insightful about for one, about like female sexuality. Not that like there's monolithic like one experience of female sexuality, but the ways in which Esther herself struggles in her marriage in the Hasidic community in Brooklyn, and the way that it's so that her struggles with sex, having sex with her husband and everything, are so tied up in the ways in which sex has been kind of talked about or not talked about her whole life, or the ways in which like her husband doesn't know how to be affectionate or how to think of sex really as anything other than this kind of obligatory act that they must do in order to, create babies and so on. There's so much great stuff around sex in this series, and also like how it handles the Hasidic culture that Esther flees from, because she obviously has her reasons for wanting to escape, and she does feel very trapped and very oppressed in that culture. And yet when she flees to Berlin and she meets like other young people around her age who kind of talk about her life back home, or as like being, they'll say like, oh, they all just saw her as like a baby making machine or whatever. And then Esther gets angry because, these are outsiders who don't really understand, who are sort of simplifying and painting the Hasidic culture she came from with this very broad and simplistic brush of like oppressive, bad culture. And, and that's not accurate either to Esther's experience, and it understandably upsets her. And so I think it honors like the complexity of the character's experience. Obviously, I'm no expert at all on Hasidic culture, but I suspect that the show goes to great lengths to be very accurate in a lot of its detail, in a lot of its portrayals, and again, just like the psychological and emotional kind of insight into its characters that the show offers is really fantastic. So, it's only 4 episodes, an hour roughly each, and there's not going to be, it's a limited series, like that's it. So kind of like Anita was saying about Little America, like if you're looking for something manageable to watch right now, like it's good for that as well. Like you can go in knowing that it's just that 4 episode experience and that's it. But it really is, I think, a fantastic show.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Ebony, what are you freaking out about?
My freak out's pretty small. So I really enjoyed the music that we saw in Little America in the manager episode, the Hindi and Punjabi music. So I wound up looking up some of it, and I've just been really enjoying some of the Punjabi discoveries that I've made through there. But it reminded me that I had been checking out these movies that I saw on this BuzzFeed list. Yes, I said BuzzFeed. 30 Bollywood films that everyone absolutely must see. Let me stop right here to say, I know the difference between Hindi and Punjabi. Okay, like I get it, but it reminded me is what I'm saying, because there is some Hindi Punjabi fusion stuff happening in Bollywood that I was interested in. So anyways, I'm gonna share the link. But one thing I love about this list, like I don't have the mental capability of deciding for myself what I'm gonna watch these days. So I liked having a list made for me. But also like, we didn't get to talk about the music that is threaded throughout Little America. But I particularly loved, like I said, the music that was in The Manager, including Boot Scootin' Boogie, a classic from Brooks and Dunn Country 1990. So anyways, that's my freak out for the week, and I'll share the link.
Definitely. Give me that link. It's so weird because I was like, I kind of want to watch more Bollywood. I was thinking about it the other day. I used to watch a bunch of them. Like there was a couple that were like these like go-tos that I loved years ago, but I don't know what Bollywood is like these days. And
see, I'm totally new to it. So like I'm going with the classics, that are, listed on this list, but a lot of them are available on Netflix. Let's do it. Let's have a Netflix watch party. Watch them together.
I would love that. Let's do that. I gotta look up the one. There was one that I loved. This is whatever. I'm gonna save this for the bonus. I don't need to ramble on about the one movie that I can never stop remembering because it was so beautiful. Okay, my freak out is not that. I am freaking out because I just had Hulu open and then it gives you all these recommendations and I usually ignore all of them. But then I saw that there's a Parks and Recreation reunion special and I was like, what the fuck? I'm a big Parks and Rec fan. I loved that show. And I just happened to put it on kind of in the background. And then I was like, this shit is the best. Okay, y'all. They did a 30-minute special where they each they were all in character and they all called each other on video chat separately, like a call tree. And it was delightful. It was so delightful. And just like being back in that world with those characters and like even some of the smaller characters that, are secondary in the show. So it's really sweet. And it's available for free on YouTube. I'll link it in the show notes. And I think NBC put it up on their website for free. So like, it's just a little nice treat for those of y'all who were Parks and Rec fans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ebony and Carolyn,
Yo.
did you know that we can, that our listeners can submit their own freakouts? Did you know this?
What?
I think I've
I
heard
know.
something
Telling
to this
me.
effect.
I know. I would love to know what y'all are freaking out about right now. And so please share that with us. You can do that at feministfrequency.com/freakout. That's FREQOUT. Thanks so much for listening to Feminist Frequency Radio. Stay tuned for the Freakin' After Party, which is only available to backers of this podcast. Hint, hint. You can learn more at patreon.com/femfreak. You can find us everywhere great podcasts are found. And if you haven't yet, go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review us. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and all the social medias at femfreak. This show is engineered by Rob Pera. Carrie Stimson provides technical support. Artwork by Jamie Varon. And our intro music is by Phil Circus. Join us next week for another feminist dive into pop culture. Bye.
Later.
Bye.